So once again, welcome to our webinar this morning. This is Patrick at Qdabra, and I am presenting part 5 of our 6-part series on InfoPath surveys. And today we're talking about SharePoint reporting. And you'll recall last week we did not do surveys, but the week before that we did part 4. And I'm just going to skip ahead here. We've got some best practices we've gone over before. This is all the same. But last time we talked about surveys, we were doing rich SharePoint surveys. We had an email coming in from an offline form, and we were uploading it to SharePoint. We had a bunch of features in it that were kind of cool. This week, we're really going to focus on getting the data out of SharePoint and doing some reporting on it. And we also modified the survey form to add a couple more types of questions. So we have you'll recall we have a 2-part solution here. I'm just going to switch and show you what we have here on we have the Office 365 site here that we've provisioned with the survey. We've got 2 forms here. We've got a question editor form and we have the filler form. So we have 2 surveys we've created, one on employee benefits and one on InfoPath Masterclass feedback. We do provide a masterclass. If you're interested in learning more about InfoPath, please let us know. We have a class coming up on July 23rd. So to look at the employee benefits here, just quickly, I'm just going to show you both of these surveys that we've created. Now this first one here shows that we've added a new type of questions called a drop-down. And that drop-down question can have any kind of values. So per question, the values can be different. But for our survey today, we've just decided to use 1 through 5 values for each of these drop-downs. Now we could change this, of course, to something completely different if we wanted to, but we just created a bunch of questions and we've used the same drop-down values for each one of those. So that's the first survey. Now the other survey that we created for today is the same idea, but we're using a different control. And so this is using a rating control, which is also a 1 to 5. And you'll see what that looks like in a second, but it is a little bit different. It's like a rating star type of deal. This survey has 4 questions. Okay, so we've created 2 surveys using our question editor form. And those surveys are going to be filled out using our survey filler form. And you'll recall this is the same as it was 2 weeks ago. We have 5 examples here. I'm going to be filling them out and showing you, but just to open one that we've already created. Here's one that uses the drop-downs, and let's go and look at another one here. We have one here that uses, I think, see if this one uses the rating control. That's another drop-down one, and I'm sure that one of these is using the rating control. This is the third drop-down one. Okay, one more here. We've got it for Qdabra. This one you'll see has a rating control there. So that's what that looks like. So we've got these 2 surveys, and we're going to be sending these surveys out, having people fill in the surveys on our SharePoint site. Now, just switching back to the presentation for a second here. So we've added the drop-down control along with the rating control. We have a solution in SharePoint that handles multiple surveys. So you can have 2 people create their own surveys. Maybe you can have a team of people creating surveys, and they can send out their survey links to the people filling them out. In fact, the people filling them out are going to go to the same place, and they're going to fill out a survey. And then what we're going to do is show you that we can map these surveys to an Excel spreadsheet. And specifically, Excel in 2007 has a nice feature, and that is that it enables you to synchronize with a SharePoint list. So we have an Excel document here. Just going to open this up. I think I have this open already. And this document is synchronizing with our answers list. Now, before I go here, I should show you that the let's see here. Before I go to Excel, I want to show you that the questions, each survey is creating a bunch of answers. And these are repeating forms. So there's either 4 questions for the survey that has the rating, or 6 questions for the one with the drop-downs, right? benefits is, I think, 6, and the other one, the InfoPath Masterclass, is 4, or vice versa. When we create those, when we respond, when we submit our survey response, those answers are going into our answers list here. So we've created a SharePoint list that has all these answers. Okay, so it has the question ID from the survey, it has the survey ID. There's only 3 and 4 right now, we don't have any others. And then it has a question text, which is a bit duplicating, but we've got all this data in here. We've got the answer from the survey, the ID for the answer, and then the response ID. So we've got 5 different survey responses. So this is our answers list. And the Excel spreadsheet is actually just synchronized to map to this. So if I go in and create a new survey, and I actually can change the survey here. I can go in here and I can look at the response from Bill Gates here. I can say, well, let's just change his response for vision here to 4. Okay. And you can see here that the response from Bill on vision care for this survey was 5, right? There's a list item. Now we're going to change it to 4, and we're going to actually right-click and update the list. And what it's doing is it's synchronizing with the list, and when it's done, we should be able to come back here to SharePoint and refresh and see that that vision care now is 4. So we've actually set up Excel to synchronize with the SharePoint list. This is pretty cool. Now, in order to do this, you need to install an add-in for Excel. You also need to make sure that you create the SharePoint list from Excel to begin with. But then once you do that, it will synchronize. Now let's change it back to 5 just to show you this. It's both ways. So I'll go in here and edit this item. And refresh. And there it is, it's 5. They're very quick to refresh. Okay, now what we want to do though is we want to take this information, now that we've mapped all of our data from those repeating sections in those surveys, we've mapped it to that answers list. We want to create a pivot on the answers list. We want to do some reporting. That's really the purpose of today's survey webinar, is to show you how 2 techniques for doing reporting. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to create a new worksheet here, and we're just going to insert a pivot chart onto this. And we just, click Insert Pivot Chart. And then, of course, you want to give it that range from the first worksheet, which is called OWSSVR, for the SharePoint site there. We just get the whole thing. For those of you familiar with Excel, this is pretty simple stuff. But now that we've got the pivot chart here, I can drag in my response ID, my answers. What I want to do is I want the answers to be here, and I want it to be an average, not the sum. And I want my survey IDs to be the filter, and I want my question text to be down here. And let's see, one more thing. I want the response ID to be here as well, I think. Maybe not. Let's leave it like this. Let's see what we get. So we have our survey here now, and you can see that it's showing you all these questions. So if we filter it by the ID of the survey, you can see that it automatically refreshes. This is kind of small. Let me see if I can get this bigger here. Okay, so here's one of our surveys, and it's showing the average 1 to 5 or 0 to 5, the average rating for the benefits, the employee benefits. If we switch to the other survey, which is the InfoPath Masterclass, you'll see that the labels change. Okay. And it's pretty dynamic. Even though there's only 4 questions for this one, it doesn't matter. The Excel is smart enough to switch back and forth between, it's got multiple items here on the axis. Switch this one more time here and show you how that works. So basically what we've done is we quickly, because we've got the data in a pivot, we've got the data in a list, we can quickly create a pivot chart in Excel. Now let's go in and let's create a new survey. So let's show how this works in real time. So in the survey filter form, I'm just going to create a new survey. Going back to our site here, we're going to add a survey. And I'm going to pick one. I'm going to pick another one for employee benefits. Actually, I'll pick the masterclass feedback. Okay, so I go in here and I'm going to add in my information. So we'll say that we are Starbucks, Howard Schultz. I don't know how to spell his name. Whatever. And we're going to fill out this. He came to our training, our InfoPath training, so he's going to fill out our survey. And he's going to give us 5 stars. Notice when we click on this rating wizard, we can you can see it's hitting the server. The drop-down control doesn't post back to the server, so it's a little faster. But this one isn't too bad. This is just a nice little control. You can change it as you go. Okay, so Howie's going to give us all 5s, and we'll submit it. So now we've just added some new survey response. So we should be able to go back to Excel and see the data. So now we've got the right survey. We don't have the right one selected. So let's select 3 first. Of course, you could have the name appear here if you're smarter than me. And now we've got to expand this a little bit. Okay, so there are questions, right? Now we should see, when we click refresh all, we should see something change here. So let's take a look. We need to first go to the first screen and do the table sync. So the refresh all does not synchronize both. So first to refresh this one, we see the new questions come in. And then, of course, we refresh here. And we should see a difference. You see a difference. There's 4. There's 3. Now, we may not see a difference. I'm not sure if that changed at all, but let's take a look at the select data and make sure that the data is coming in correctly. And specifically, we want to make sure that the data, that the pivot table is capturing here is from the correct section on the first page. It looks like it may not have expanded to get those new values. But anyway, that's how you do it, and you can set it up to automatically expand. So I want to show you another technique though, real quick, and that's InfoPath. So we can also create an InfoPath form to do this, and we're going to just create a simple form here, a blank form, and connect it to the same SharePoint data. We're going to call this our survey report, and we will add a field here for the ID. Now it's really easy to create these surveys in InfoPath. You just have to set up a couple of data connections and then do some filtering. So the first thing we'll do is we'll change this to a drop-down. We're going to add a data connection for that list. So we'll just add a data connection to the SharePoint list. And I need to go off and get it. So my list is the answers list. Actually, it's the survey names, I believe, first. And that's the first list I want. We have 2 connections here, one to the survey names and one to the answers. This is a receive data connection to a SharePoint library list, and we just paste it in here. And we make sure we get the names and the information for those names, which is the name. Okay, now what we can do is we can quickly rebind our drop-down to that external data source. So those are the names there, and we want to change this to be the ID. That's going to be the value. We'll show the name of the survey, but we want to store the ID in the form. Okay, now the next thing we want to do is we want to basically query the answers. So based on the survey that's selected, we are going to query the list of answers. So we need to set up another data connection. This time we're going to set up to the answers list in SharePoint. And this is a little bit like that. It should figure it out. It didn't, but we do have it here. And we want to get all this data here for the answers. And we do not want to query it on load.
Patrick?
Yes.
I think we've lost your sharing, your desktop sharing. We can still hear you.
Where did you lose me?
A little bit back, I think.
Okay.
It's loading right now.
Thanks for jumping in.
Okay, now it appears to be back, at least for me. I hope everybody else can see it now as well.
Do you know exactly where it was, where I was when I stopped?
I don't. I'm sorry. I was multitasking. Let's see. See if somebody else knows.
We finished with the.
Oh, here we go. Setting data connections.
Okay. So yeah, so I'm still setting data connection. I'm creating a second data connection here for survey answers, and I've just created this here, and I don't want to query this on load because I want to query it after they set the survey ID. So that we'll add a rule here. So when the survey ID changes, we're going to add a rule that sets the value in that secondary data connection that we just added. And specifically, we're going to query for the answers. But before we query, we want to set the value of the ID. In this case, we want to set the value of the survey ID equal to the selected survey ID, which is that. Okay, and then we're going to query the data connection. Okay, so we quickly create a form that filters. If you have a lot of data, you don't want to pull all the data from the list in your form. So we've quickly created a form that filters the answers based on the survey that's selected. Now, just to test this out, I'm just going to drag and drop the data connection into the form and preview it. And this is going to show up on my other screen here, so let me drag this over. You can see here that I do have this form, and I've got those two surveys, and it's pulling in all the values from the InfoPath masterclass as well as the benefits. Now, this isn't really so useful because what I really want to do is show a report. I want to aggregate it. But it's really easy from here to make a few changes. So let's do that. If you go into change binding, you can select which items you display, and we're going to take some of these out actually, and then we end up with a question, text, and answer. And what we're going to do here is we're going to change this question text into a calculated value. And this answer is going to be the average. And so here we have to get a little tricky. And so what we're going to do here is change this also into a calculated value. And then we need to edit that calculated value. And what we're going to put in here is the average of the answers. So let me just switch to my notepad here, and I've got this formula so I don't forget it. Basically, the way we do it is we just delete this answer here. We're going to insert a function, which is going to be the average function, right on top there. And then we just double click, and here we're going to add the. This gets kind of tricky here because we want the answer, and we want to filter it based on whether or not the question text is equal to the current or not. And so you go in here and you just you set up an expression, and we want like this. It's a little tricky, but once you do it once, you can remember how you did it the next time. So here, what we're doing is we're saying that we want to average all of those values where the question text is equal to the current one. And that should work. And let's just verify that we got this correct here. Okay, it's a little bit off, so I'm going to just paste in the right value here. Let's verify that. Okay. Now what you want to do here is the XPath is averaging the answers, and we just need to make sure that we select the answer and then make sure that it is equal to the current text. Okay. Now, the next thing we need to do is we need to set up filtering for the repeating section. So we're going to add a formatting here, and what we're going to do is we're going to hide the question text that have already shown up. So the way you do this is you use the preceding sibling function, and we're just going to paste that in, and this will all be available to you as part of the download for the webinar today. Now, finally, it would be nice if we had the count. Well, first of all, let's preview this and make sure it's working. So here now we've added filtering, and what you see here is I think we didn't get the question text correct, but you can see here it is averaging the values. It's just displaying the questions twice. So we need to fix that, because in here we've got 3 responses, so it's displaying 3 different responses. So let's go and fix that. So what we want to do here is select this again, make sure that we do this correctly. And let me just show you the one that works here. I've got a couple more things I want to show you. I've got the correct version here on one of my InfoPath instances. And what I've done here is can't create it. It's hard to create these on the fly, but you'll see this when it's working, and you can take a look at this and how it's working. So basically what we want to do is we want to query the number of surveys, get the count, and then do the averaging here. And so this is kind of a nice way to do reporting in InfoPath. And what we've done here is if we go in and add a new survey, and actually let's go back to our site, and let's just add a new survey. We'll add another one for the employee benefits. And we'll call this, I'm not sure this. And he's got a lot of negative feedback for us here. His program, the benefits program, isn't up to his liking. You can see here that the drop-down also does the post back to the server. Can't really get away from that. Okay, so we filled out the survey for John Nordstrom, and we're going to submit this. And then we're going to go back to our InfoPath form. And we don't even have to refresh it. We can just go back to the preview, select nothing, and then select employee benefits. And now we have 4. We used to have 3, now we have 4. And you can see that the numbers have come down a bit because he gave us a bad rating. Okay, so that's a really simple way to do reporting in InfoPath using filtering. Now for the count, what we did was we have to do another tricky calculate value here, and the way we're doing it is with this this XPath here. We got to make sure we count all the ones that aren't equal to the others, because we've got all the different answers for all the different surveys in the list. We only want to count the ones where the response ID is not equal to the preceding one. And that gives us the unique number of responses for the survey. And you can take a look at this form after the fact and see how we did this. You know, it is not, obviously this preceding sibling is working correctly now here, whereas it wasn't in the one I created on the fly. So you can take a look at why that is. Something I missed there. But anyway, that's how you do quick reporting in InfoPath. And I want to go back to my presentation here real quick, and I've got a few more things to talk about. So in general, there's one more thing I want to show you, but before I get to that, I just want to quickly discuss the requirements. To do synchronization with Excel and the SharePoint list, you need to download an add-in, and when you get the presentation, you can get a link to that SharePoint Microsoft blog. You need to create the list from Excel first before you start synchronizing. You can't do it from SharePoint. The pivot chart in Excel, you need to make sure that those columns are numbers. and you need a unique column for your response to make sure that you can pivot it. When we're mapping InfoPath forms to lists, you're going to need to use our QRules plugin. So that's one of the most popular uses of QRules, is to map repeating data in an XML form to a list. And then I haven't talked about the REST Excel web services yet, but this also does not work with the synchronization because it requires a 2010 format, doesn't do external data queries. So we could not get this working for the Excel spreadsheet with the chart we had in it, but I can show you this technique with a stock static 2010 Excel spreadsheet. So the key takeaways today: Survey Editor enables multiple surveys. By mapping those surveys to the list, you get the ability to extract the data, the repeating data from your InfoPath forms into the SharePoint list. The Excel synchronization enables aggregate reporting on that data. You can also batch edit the data, but it disables Excel services, so you can't use a browser-enabled Excel services to edit that data. Finally, the reporting, InfoPath reporting, that's a nice, simple way to create reports, and there is some tricky filtering in it, but it's surprisingly easy to create these simple reports in InfoPath. So if I don't have any questions, I can quickly show the REST demo. In fact, while you're typing your question, I'll do that. If you have questions, this is a great time to type them into the chat. And I'm going to switch and show you this other demonstration here. I did this back in February, but if we show you this again, you can actually create nice, you can pull charts into InfoPath, and the way you do it is using Excel services. So we have an Excel REST form here that has a link to a spreadsheet, and you can see here that it pulls in the graphic for that spreadsheet from the spreadsheet. There's a chart in the spreadsheet. It pulls that into the form, and I can actually change the values here on the fly, and you can see it's updating them on the fly. Pretty cool. Now we're using Excel services to get an image, and we also have to have a spreadsheet, and that spreadsheet has to be 2010 format in the browser. And that spreadsheet is located underneath our shared documents. We just have this really simple spreadsheet called test, which has just a table and a chart in it. So the InfoPath form is using a calculate value to reference that. And once again, let me show you that one more time. Back to the Excel REST sample. And you can see that calculated value right there. So basically what it is if I open this form in the designer, you'll see that there's an image, a link to an image, and it has a calculated value on it, default value, which is this string. It's using the Excel REST web services there to pull in that test XLS test spreadsheet from the shared documents, and it's actually extracting the chart, and it's saying, I want you to set the chart values equal to the other values in my form. So if I change this value to 2000, you'll see that string changes and the graph changes as well. So this is a really cool technique. This does work just fine in 365. However, you have to have 2010 format. You can't have an Excel spreadsheet that is synchronized with a list, and that was the main disadvantage of that for today's survey demo. So we did show reporting though in Excel. We showed reporting in InfoPath. So yeah, I hope you got an idea of how to do that. And thanks for joining us. If you've got questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them now. We will be making the information available to you if you contact us on our webpage. And next week we're going to do more on complex filtering. So we've got more techniques to show you how to hide previous sections in repeating drop-down, or previous selections, that is, and so forth. And we'll do part 6 of the survey stuff, which is going to be database integration, in August. I'll be doing training in Australia and New Zealand the next few weeks, and then some vacation. So I won't get back to you until August timeframe. So I do have one question from Ralph. Do you have a recommendation of resources to figure out InfoPath XPath? Yes, indeed. A very, very important question. Well, the easiest thing to do is to go to our InfoPath Dev forum and ask us. We have a bunch of XPath experts in the forum. Jimmy, Rish, Hillary, Stupa are both InfoPath MVPs. They have a very, we all respond to 90% of the questions asked in the forum. We don't ask you to pay us or anything. The forum is free. The other thing you can do is you can take a look at our website. InfoPath Dev has a link to InfoPath, to the resources there for XPath. So you can go to InfoPath Dev, and there's a link. I believe it's in the upper right-hand corner here, InfoPath resources, and you can click on the references here, and you should have information on XPath in here. There's a lot of XPath out there on the web, and there's a question from Justin. One of your slides mentioned that Excel services were disabled. Correct. So that's the issue. You can do Excel services if you have an Excel 2010 spreadsheet that is not connected to external data. So the reason why we couldn't do this with our sample here, this is because this one is connected. We have that table synchronization going on here. So if I synchronize, you'll see that new survey come in, the new answers for Nordstrom there. Because we have that external data connection, Excel services in SharePoint won't let us use this in the browser, which means we can't get at the images. Hopefully that answers your question. I want to thank everyone for joining us today. Like I said, don't forget to send us email if you want the packet, and that's it. Hope you have a great one.